Tonight at 10 meetings with the European Union and Japanese aid agency officials, His Majesty urges more international assistance to help Jordan cope with the Syrian refugee crisis. Syrian opposition members hold last-minute meetings to decide whether to attend UN peace talks to start for tomorrow. And Germany and other European countries are sending refugees back to their war-torn countries. Good evening and welcome to the news at 10. His Majesty the King discussed with Spain's monarch Philip VI international and Middle East developments, top of which are the fight against terrorism and the repercussions of the Syrian crisis. During a telephone call, emphasis was laid on a London donors conference next week on aid to countries hosting Syrian refugees, among them Jordan. His Majesty the King said Jordan seeks to further develop its partnership with the European Union within the country's advanced status with the bloc. At a meeting with the European Commissioner for Enlargement and European Neighbourhood Policy, Johannes Hahn, King Abdullah thanked the EU for its aid for the kingdom's development and reform projects. He stressed the importance of rules of origin between Jordan and the EU to guarantee support for Jordan's commerce and industry sectors. The King said the EU has a key role to play in efforts to solve regional crises, top of which are the conflict in Syria, the war against terrorism, and efforts to revive the Palestinian-Israeli peace process. His Majesty spoke about the challenges posed to Jordan by hosting over 1.3 million Syrian refugees and said the kingdom pinned high hopes on next week's London conference on Syrian refugees. He expressed hope that the meeting would help Jordan address the burden of the refugee influx and provide aid to economic projects that would help ease the mounting pressures as a result of the refugee crisis. He said services offered by Jordan to the refugee outpace its resources, stressing it's high time the international community, the EU and world nations and organizations provide the necessary aid to the kingdom in this regard. King Abdullah also met with President of the Japan International Cooperation Agency, JICA, Shinichi Kitaoka, and discussed ways to expand the scope of cooperation between the aid agency and Jordanian institutions. He commended Tokyo's continued aid to Jordan via JICA, which is one of the kingdom's leading international aid providers, to help the implementation of economic projects and youth and women training programs. His Majesty stressed increased aid for the kingdom to deal with the Syrian crisis, particularly host communities. In a separate meeting, His Majesty and International Labour Organization (ILO) Director General Guy Ryder discussed ways to forge closer ties between the kingdom and the UN agency. King Abdullah noted the need to support Jordan in labour-related fields, as well as supporting job-creating projects to curb unemployment and poverty and raise standard of living. Prime Minister Abdullah Mansour also highlighted the Jordanian-European partnership, voicing true country's desire to further boost ties in various fields. Mansour also told European Commissioner for Enlargement and European Neighbourhood Policy, Johannes Hahn, that despite economic challenges and hosting refugees from regional countries, Jordan is working to boost democracy and political reforms. The Prime Minister said the kingdom attaches great importance to the upcoming Syrian Donors Conference in London. The kingdom, he said, is performing its ethical and humanitarian role towards the refugees on behalf of the international community. Mansour voiced hope that the European Union will support Jordan with regard to rules of origin to promote the entry of its exports to European markets and attract European investments, which will create jobs for Jordanian youth. The Prime Minister and Director General of the International Labour Organization, Guy Ryder, discussed the impact of Syrian crisis on the kingdom's labour market. During the meeting, Source said Ryder's visit is very important as it comes ahead of the London Conference of Donors to look closely at the burdens being shouldered by Jordan due to the repercussions of the Syrian crisis. Source stressed the need for the international community to shoulder its ethical and humanitarian role to support Jordan in this endeavor. Ryder said the International Labour Organization will take part at the London conference and will rally support for Jordan. In another meeting, Nsur reviewed with Japan International Cooperation Agency JICA President Shinichi Kitauka the burdens being shouldered by Jordan due to the Syrian crisis. Nsur praised programs and projects being implemented by the Japan Aid Agency in Jordan in a number of vital sectors. The Japanese agency's head said Jordan should not be felt alone to carry the burden of hosting the refugees and should receive further assistance to face economic challenges. He commended reforms Jordan had implemented at the political and social and economic levels. Syria opposition members met for a third day to decide whether to attend UN peace talks with less than 24 hours before the negotiations were due to open in Geneva. In the ongoing Syrian conflict, suspected Russian airstrikes killed at least 54 civilians in the rebel-held areas of Syria in the past 24 hours. Here's more.
The clock is ticking for a new round of Syrian peace talks to kick off. But contradictory statements by opposition groups have thrown the negotiations in doubt. Syria opposition groups and representatives from the government were set to meet in Geneva tomorrow. A Syrian opposition group said it has called on the United Nations to rethink its decision about who to invite for the negotiations and has sent UN Syria envoy Stephen de Mistura a counter-proposal. Haytham Manna, co-leader of the Syrian Democratic Council, had already said he would not take part in the peace talks unless two Kurdish leaders were also invited to participate. He told journalists he thought the peace talks might not start tomorrow as planned.
I don't think so. For technical reasons now it's impossible. But perhaps there will be other things like press conference but not the conference itself. Up to now, we finished our list and we have what we can call the democratic secular Syrian list of 15 essential and 15 others, supplicant, and we are waiting because Mr. de Mistura received this list and the Americans and Russians.
Syrian Democratic Council co-leader Randa Qassis said an opposition group said it will participate in the next round even if Syrian Kurds have not been invited.
We are participating. In any case, we will participate in this conference. We won't let the other delegation from Riyadh, supported by Saudi Arabia, take that space. We are secular Syrians, insisting on the secular identity of Syria, and we stay anyway. We will, in any case, participate to this conference.
Preparations for a new round of diplomacy went on, so did the deadly conflict on the ground. Russian warplanes carried out more raids in Syria, including villages near Homs. The Syrian Observatory for Human Rights said Russian strikes had killed 29 civilians, including 9 women and 3 children, in villages controlled by Daesh group in the eastern Deir ez-Zor province. Hiba Al-Atoum for the news at 10.
Border guards received 55 Syrians in the past 24 hours as refugees fleeing the conflict continue to pour across the kingdom's northern frontiers. A Jordan Armed Forces Arab Army source said troops provided the refugees with the necessary aid before moving them to refugee camps. It said Royal Medical Services personnel treated the sick among the refugees. The Syrian refugees population in Jordan is on the increase, with dozens of people arriving on a daily basis. US-led coalition forces training Iraqi soldiers to fight Daesh terrorist group are applying lessons from last month's recapture of Ramadi to prepare the army to retake the northern city of Mosul last year or later this year. The Army's 72nd Infantry Brigade is receiving training as part of a 10-week course in a base in southern Baghdad that will make it the Army's best-trained brigade and equipped it for a key role in the government's promised offensive to retake Mosul, Iraq's second-largest city. Last December, Iraq's elite counter-terrorism forces pushed the terrorists out of the mosque of Ramadi in the Euphrates River Valley west of the capital after a 6-month siege. The head of NATO said the United States requested the alliance's help in fighting Daesh militants in the Middle East by providing AWACS surveillance planes. NATO is not directly involved in combating the terror group in Syria and Iraq, with the United States leading a coalition of nations that includes all 28 NATO allies. NATO Secretary General Jens Stoltenberg told a news conference that alliance defense ministers would discuss the US request early next month.
I can confirm that we have got the requests from the US to provide support to the efforts of the coalition and to help them with the NATO AWACS surveillance planes. And we are now looking into that request, and this is a decision which will be taken by 28 allies.
Daesh militants claim responsibility for a suicide car bombing outside Yemeni President Abd Rabbi Mansour had his residence in the southern city of Aden that killed at least 6 people. Officials said Hadi was inside his residence at the time of the attack but was unharmed. In Yemen's capital Sana'a, the Saudi-led coalition launched an airstrike on the presidential palace and neighboring area. The airstrike lasted for more than 2 hours, destroying military targets and affecting many houses in Sana'a, which was under the control of Houthis rebels and their allied forces. Sweden said it's likely to deport up to half last year's record 163,000 asylum seekers, either voluntarily or forcibly. A growing number of Iraqi refugees in Germany are also choosing to return to their war-torn country, frustrated with the slow asylum process in Germany. More in this report.
It's not yet a flood, but a steady stream of Iraqi asylum seekers in Germany are going home. Frustrated by the protracted asylum process and miserable conditions at shelters, they've decided they're better off returning to their war-torn country.
When I return to Baghdad, I will kneel down and kiss the earth.
Long lines like these at the Office for Health and Social Affairs, where the migrants are required to register, contributed to the frustration. Almost 3,000 Iraqis applied for asylum in Germany last year, but Germany says the number of them choosing to return began climbing in September. Now Iraqi Airways offers 3 flights per week, including this one from Berlin. Many of the passengers are traveling on one-way travel documents issued after they either lost or destroyed their old passports. Arriving in Erbil, the weariness of the round-trip journey shows.
I regret going there. I wish we had not. I wish we had drowned in the sea and we had never gone there.
Both Erbil in the northern Kurdish autonomous region and Baghdad are outside the territory under Islamic State control and have not seen heavy conflict, but bomb attacks occur regularly in Baghdad. But these disenchanted Iraqis would rather build their future in their old home than in a new one that did not live up to their dreams.
Iran's President Hassan Rouhani arrived at the Élysée presidential palace for talks with French leader François Hollande. Paris was the second leg of a European trip by the Iranian leader that followed an agreement between Iran and the West on Tehran's nuclear program. The deal resulted in lifting Western sanctions on Iran. France and Iran held the sale of dozens of Airbus planes, the renewal of a decades-old car-making venture, and an export credit deal as symbols of thawing relations. Other agreements in the areas of health, agriculture and the environment were due later in the day. At the French Foreign Ministry, Iranian Foreign Minister Mohamed Zarif and his French counterpart Laurent Fabius signed a set of cooperation agreements. The first was a commitment to political dialogue between Paris and Tehran, and the second to the establishment of a joint economic commission between the two countries. But the Iranian visit was marred by protests in Paris organized by the Iranian opposition. The White House said most of U.S. efforts to fight the Zika virus would be focused on sharing information about the risks with the public. President Barack Obama earlier called for the rapid development of tests, vaccines and treatments to fight the mosquito-transmitted Zika virus. The World Health Organization said the mosquito-borne Zika virus could be linked to 4,000 suspected cases of microcephaly in Brazil, including 49 deaths. The WHO said the disease's rapid spread is due to a lack of immunity among the population and the prevalence of the mosquito that carries the virus.
You start with a total number in the Americas of more than 2 million cases transmitted, reported of dengue per year, with a virus which is already circulating for years. You can come up with a figure between 3 and 4 million cases of Zika in the Americas. I'm sorry if I was not clear at the moment of starting my statement. Definitely, the Zika virus in the American region is circulating with very high intensity at this moment.
The 4 bronze lions of London's central Trafalgar Square got a temporary addition with a clockwork sculpture of the animal unveiled to highlight the plight of the big cats. The statue, made of clockwork mechanics, will stand in the square for just a day before being auctioned off to raise money for National Geographic's Big Cats initiative, aimed to halt the decline of big cats in the wild. According to the initiative, recent estimates indicate there are likely some 30,000 African lions in the wild.
More lion statues in the world than there are lions roaming in the wild. So to try and highlight the issue and say that there are things that we can do, this is being unveiled here for one day only.
Champion Novak Djokovic foiled a fight back from Roger Federer to defeat the Swiss 6-1, 6-2, 3-6, 6-3 at the Australian Open and charge into a 5th successive Grand Slam final. The world number 1 will bid for a record 6th title at Melbourne Park in the professional era and will meet the winner of 2nd seed Andy Murray and 13th seed Milos Raonic, who play in the 2nd semi-final tomorrow. Serena Williams underlined the difference in class and power between her and the rest of the women's field with a 6-love, 6-4 demolition of 4th seed Agnieszka Radwanska to reach her 7th Australian Open final. Williams cleaned up the first set in just 20 minutes before Radwanska, who had been bidding to reach her 2nd Grand Slam final after Wimbledon in 2012. If Williams wins next Saturday's final against 7th-seeded Angelica Kerber, she will equal Steffi Graf's record of 22 Grand Slam singles title, a record in the Open era. And finally, to the weather forecast, chilly conditions will remain countrywide for the rest of tonight and cold in the Jordan Valley and the Dead Sea, while frost formation is expected in many regions across the kingdom. Temperatures are expected to fall below freezing tonight in Tafila, Shobak, Petra, Man and Al Azraq. As for tomorrow, cold conditions will prevail in much of the country with a high of 9 degrees Celsius in Amman and a continued chance for frost in the evening hours. The Gulf of Aqaba should expect relatively cold conditions with northerly moderate winds and calm seas. Next are the lows and highs for tonight and tomorrow. And to close, here are our top stories once again. In meetings with European Union and Japanese aid agency officials, His Majesty urges more international assistance to help Jordan cope with the Syrian refugee crisis. Syrian opposition members hold last-minute meetings to decide whether to attend UN peace talks set to start tomorrow. And Germany and other European countries are sending back refugees to their war-torn countries. And with that, we come to the end of tonight's news. I'm Lawal Balkar. Thank you for watching and have a good night.